Hello there. Hello. Assalamu alaikum. This is Amnah here from My English Matters. And today we are live at 11 a.m. Tuesday, 13th of July, 2021. So if you are watching, say hello to me because today we are going to talk about how to stick to your point and avoid rambling. So let me just show you the slide here. All right, how to stick to your point and avoid rambling. So I have 7 points today to share with you all. Hello, Madam Azima, I can see you. Wa alaikum salam. How to stick to your point and avoid rambling. Now, one thing that we notice about some people is that when they speak, they tend to ramble. Does that sound like you? Are you a rambler or are you a mumbler? So a rambler, what they usually do is when they have a point to share, they sometimes go off point. So they speak too much and it becomes too confusing and too lengthy that people lose the point that you're trying to share, right? So that's what rambling means when you go on for too long. Hello, Afiq. Hello, Aisha. Hi, Nigel, Fasola, Nanora. Wa alaikum salam, Hafizul. Okay, great to see you. Thanks for saying hello to me. So today's topic is how to stick to your point and avoid rambling. If you think you are a rambler, let me know. If you are a mumbler, let me know. So people who ramble are usually those who are quite fluent, meaning that they are able to speak, but they talk too much to the point where people lose their points. And this could be because they are nervous. It could be because they are just used to speaking, or it could be that they're just excited. They have so many things to share. So they tend to ramble. They go on and on without coming to an end, without closing whatever they want to say. And it's important for us to stick to your point so that people get what it is that you want to share and they are able to take action on what you want to share. Okay, so I'm going to share some few tips, about 7 tips on how to avoid rambling and stick to your point. Hello, Azima. Hello, Lan. Hello, Maihan. Asari, Muhammad Asari. Okay, let me show you my slide now. Okay, how to stick to your point and avoid rambling. Number 1, ask a friend or a colleague if you ramble. A lot of people who ramble, they don't even realize that they are rambling. Okay, so what you can do is, if you are the type of person who tends to talk a lot, maybe you can ask a friend or you can ask your colleague and ask them, do you think I ramble when I talk, when I speak, when I do a presentation? Right? So you can ask them. And sometimes people they just want to be nice, so they don't want to hurt your feelings. So find someone who you can trust, who will give you their opinion, not because they want to take care of your feelings, but they want you to improve. So for me, this person is my husband. He is the person who is honest. When I ask him for an honest opinion, then he usually gives me an honest opinion, right? If I say, do you think I'm fat? No, he's not going to answer that honestly. But if I ask him, like, do you think I ramble? Then he's going to tell me. Right? Sometimes he tells me that I tend to repeat the same thing again and again, and I've tried to avoid doing that. So find somebody that you trust and ask them, do you think I ramble? So that's the first thing that you got to do to avoid rambling. Number 2, use a framework. So a person who rambles, they have one point, but they give so many other points that are not related to that first point. And one way that you can avoid doing that is by using a framework. So in our online course, Communicate with Confidence, hello to our Communicate with Confidence students if you are watching, we share a few frameworks that you can use to help you speak. But the one that I'm going to talk about today is the PrEP framework. So if you tend to speak and you ramble, it's best to have a PrEP framework. So the PrEP framework can also work if you are a person who does not ramble, but you're just a person who doesn't, you don't usually elaborate. So use the PrEP framework if you tend to ramble. So the PrEP framework is P, point, R, reason, E for elaborate or example, and P back to your point. So for example, if somebody asks you a question, so Amnah, can you share your opinion on this? So you share the point, and then you share the reason why you give that point. and you give an example, and then you give the point again. So it's like one complete package for the point. And that's how you prevent yourself from going on and on about other points that are not related to the question. Okay, so use a prep framework. Okay, number 3, stick to one point and one example at a time. So people who ramble, they have one point, they have 10 examples for that point. But if you want to avoid rambling and boring your audience, just stick to one point and just give one example. It's enough already. Some people, they give one point and they don't give any example. These are people who don't ramble. They're the opposite of ramblers. They are just people who get frozen when they have to speak. So remember, just one point and one example is enough, especially if you're pressed for time. So people, sometimes it's like one point is enough and one example is enough for you to get your point across. You don't need to share 3 examples, 4 examples. And sometimes we want to share a lot of examples because that point is really important to us. But remember that one good point and one good example is usually enough. Okay, so remember that. Stick to one point and one example at a time. Number 4, slow down to emphasize important points. If you are the kind of person who tends to talk quite fast, right, it's good to have different paces in your speech or whenever you're speaking. If you are the type of person who tends to talk quite fast, when it comes to the important points, slow down. So when you are slowing down, people will notice that, oh, she's slowing down in this point, so this point must be important. Okay, so remember that. Slow down on the important points so that people can remember it better. Right? And then number 5, go faster on the unimportant points. This applies to people who tend to talk very slowly, right? You're rambling on and you're talking very slowly. But when it comes to the parts that are not very important, it could be maybe you have one point and you have 3 examples. So you could go slow on the first point and the first example, but maybe your other 2 examples, just go through it quickly because by that time people will already know what you're trying to say. So just go faster on the unimportant points. Number 6, pay attention to your audience. Now, what happens is when we are presenting, this usually happens when you are presenting, we have prepared the slides, we've prepared everything that we want to say, but we forget to prepare to pay attention to our audience. Now, this applies to presentations. It also applies to normal everyday conversations. When you are speaking, you have to be prepared to have an interactive session or a dialogue. So look at your audience. It could be just one person that you're speaking to. It could be a group of people that you're speaking to. If they look bored, then maybe it's time for you to wrap up. Stop rambling, get back to your point and quickly summarize or quickly conclude. If they look like they are staring into space like this, they're not present with you, that maybe is there to show you that you are rambling, you are a bit boring. If they're looking at their phone or they're looking at their laptop, they're doing their work, those are all signs that you've got to quickly wrap up, get back to your point and stop rambling. So pay attention to your audience. It's really important. And it's a bit difficult now because when you are working from home and you do your meetings on Zoom or you do your meetings on Microsoft Teams, sometimes people don't turn on their cameras and you can't see what they look like or what they're doing. So that can be a bit difficult. So what you can do in that kind of situation is stop and engage with the audience. So say that you can't see them or you can see them and they look bored. So stop, either you wrap up or you just quickly say like, do you understand what I'm saying? Or have I got my point across? Or you could say, do you have any questions? So you are engaging with them. So engagement is really important for presentations and when you are speaking so that you don't ramble, okay? Or sometimes when you're speaking a lot and people are like nodding their heads, okay, they get what I'm saying, so it's now time for me to move on and stop harping on that same point again and again and again, right? So you've got to be aware of your audience to stop yourself from rambling. So those are my 7 points, how to stick to your point and avoid rambling. Number 1, ask a friend or a colleague if you ramble. Number 2, use a framework. So for us, we use the PrEP framework: point, reason, example, and then back to your point. Number 3, stick to 1 point and 1 example at a time. Remember, you don't need to share 3 examples, 4 examples, 5 stories for 1 point. Usually 1 point is enough. Unless you think that 1 point or that 1 example does not support your point, then maybe you can give another example. But 1 or 2 examples are fine for 1 point. Number 4, slow down to emphasize important points. This applies for people who tend to talk a bit fast. So they ramble on and on, they're talking too fast, and they forget to emphasize the important points by slowing down. Number 5, go faster on the unimportant points. So if you have unimportant points in your presentation or when you're speaking, you can just quickly go through them. You don't need to go so slowly on those unimportant points. Number 6, pay attention to your audience. So remember, if your audience looks bored, if they are staring into space or their eyes are glazed over, then maybe it's time for you to move on. Or number 7, stop and then engage with them. Ask them, right? Are you listening to me? You can be frank, like, you look bored. You look bored or you look confused. Have I lost you, or do you have any questions? So engage with them. So engage, Lan says, what is engaged? Engage means to interact with them. Get their attention. Because the whole point of you speaking is that, 1, you want to share a message. Number 2, or you want them to do something. So it's important for them to engage with you so that they are able to receive your message and do something about it. Okay, so those are my tips from 1 to 7, how to stick to your point and avoid rambling. If you have any questions, you can post them here. Let me see. Dr. Idris says, you did not include Google Meet when you mentioned about working from home. Okay, so Google Meet, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, whatever platform you use for working from home, it all applies. So as long as it's a video call. Let me see. I don't have any more questions here. Mohammed Tarmizi says, hello, finally can join your live. Hello. Okay, so I don't think I have any more questions. If you do, let me know. You can post them in the comments. And that's all from me for today. Doc Idris says, why would you need to include unimportant points in your presentation and go quickly over them? I would recommend avoid them altogether. Yeah, you can recommend them. You can avoid them altogether if it's unimportant. But sometimes, when you're speaking and you have 1 or 2 examples, and that second example is less important, but you still need to put it there, you can go quickly through it. So sometimes there are parts of a presentation where it's more important, less important. All right, but you have to decide for yourself whether you want to put in the unimportant thing or whether you want to put it in or whether you don't want to. That's really up to you to discern for yourself. Rohaida, what happens if audiences interrupt you in between? How to handle and get back to your point? If they interrupt you with a question, then it's okay, you can answer them. If you don't want to answer them, you can say, thank you so much for your question. I'll get back to your question later, or just answer them. It's fine. And get back to your point. You could say, okay, back to my point just now before I was interrupted. You could say that. All right. So Jamila says, means to focus or concentrate on you. I think so. Okay, I don't know what you mean by that, but thank you. Okay, so that's all from me for today. Thank you for joining me. If you are not yet on our list, go to myenglishmatters.com, join our email list, and you'll get 7 tips to help you speak with confidence. And you'll also get weekly tips every Thursday with tips and lessons for you to improve your English, as well as regular updates about our online programs and when we open registration for our online programs. So that's all from me for today. Thank you for joining me, and Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.